If someone said, okay, Atif, you're in charge of rebalancing the economy, what would the top two or three policy prescriptions you would put forward?
There's some important things that need to be done. A, on the demand side of the economy, and then B, on the supply side of the economy. So with the supply side, remember, as I was building the narrative, one of the key components of this narrative was the inability of the economy to channel savings for more productive investment purposes. That's a real problem. There is a lot of the evidence has been building up over and over that the economy around the world, especially in the US, faces restrictions, supply side restrictions, driven by regulation, driven by zoning laws, driven by the ability of a minority to block certain things which are good for infrastructure. And we need to do some serious supply side reforms. I think we have made some big mistakes, first order mistakes, thinking about regulation of the financial sector. Let me just give you one example, which is Basel regulation. So, Basel regulation, for the audience, these are rules that are enforced upon by supervisors for all banks around the world. It's kind of this unified regulatory framework. These Basel rules essentially incentivize banks what kind of loans to give. That's one way to think about it. And so these Basel rules would say, for example, to the bank that you have capital, your equity on the balance sheet, and that equity is charged because you don't want banks to be over levered. So if they lend too much, leverage increases. That's where these Basel regulations come in. But here's the kicker in Basel regulation. They charge equity or capital not equally based on whether they are lending to you and I, the government, whether they are lending against land or whether they are lending to new small, medium businesses, for example. The Basel regulations say that if you're lending to small, medium businesses, the risk weights would be larger. That is to say, effectively, we will charge a much higher slice of your equity against that lending to small businesses. But you know what? If you lend against very high valuations of land in Manhattan and you give a commercial loan against that, we'll consider that very low risk, very little capital to be charged against that. So guess what do you think banks are going to do? They can get much higher levered return on lending against land value as opposed to lending to what really matters for the economy, which is business. We have it upside down, but we need to think about collective interest when we are designing regulation. My third would be on the demand side, and that comes on the taxation side. And I think the whole taxation system needs to be reformed to rebalance the economy. How? First, labor taxes, especially on lower and middle, even upper middle class, they need to come down. Payroll taxes, labor income tax in general. Taxes need to go up on things like capital gain, especially capital gain on like idle capital, if you will. Estate inheritance, estate taxes, that's a big issue. We do need to think about wealth taxes more seriously, especially on types of unproductive assets. So the key idea is lowering taxes on productive investment and also taxes on productive physical investment. So my earlier example of Basel regulation, it's an effective tax on productive physical investment.